paid program. The views and opinions expressed are those of the sponsor and do not necessarily reflect the views of Radio 1, WTLC AM 1310, 92.7 FM, 95.1 FM, The Light, and its management. And now, to address the legal concerns of our community, AM 1310 The Light presents Legally Speaking. Here is today's host.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. For all our audience on WTOC, AM and FM, also, I'd like to announce that we're also broadcasting live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Now, it's very important because we will have continuous broadcasts on the social media, and during the course of the program, we'll cut away from time to time to advertisement, but not on the social media. Today, I'm blessed to be joined by the superstar lawyer panel, Vanita Banks, Masters in Tax, is always an expert commentator, and also John Sweeney, one of the top trial lawyers in America. We're just happy to have them. But before we get started today with our superstar panels, a couple things I need to update you on that the questions we get during the course of the week. During the course of the week, I do work as a lawyer, as you know, many hours, but I get contacts at the law firm, it seems like every week now, about questions. And I appreciate your question. And one of the big questions of the week want to know about pharmacy costs and things like that. I thought it was a really well thought out question, person that you sent that to me. And the answer to your question, that is, how do you get a cheaper pharmaceutical product? Well, first you shop around. Pharmacy products, from pharmacy to pharmacy, they different pricing. But almost every drug that you buy, you can get a coupon. So most of if you go to the internet, whatever drugs you're taking, so those drugs that cost you $400 or $500, with a coupon, you likely get it for no more than $20 to $25. Just type it in and make sure you take advantage of that. Now, the second thing is that whenever you have these pharmacy issues, you always have the right to get a competitive cost from another pharmacist. So when you get a prescription from your doctor and you go there and you get shock value, like you go to CVS, I was surprised at the cost difference, the price breakdown between one pharmacy cost and another one. It was educated me because I thought that it would make a big difference. And so you could also call the radio station again, you lost the contact. And so now, having said that, the second thing, though, was the big legislation that passed this week. And there are some things that you need to know. And I was watching one of the news channel, and their big deal on the news channel had to deal with the issue of earmarks. And this is important legislation because now the Democrat control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Earmarks are specific payments made to individuals by request. And these earmarks
paid program. The views and opinions expressed are those of the sponsor and do not necessarily reflect the views of Radio 1, WTLC AM 1310, 92.7 FM, 95.1 FM, The Light, and its management.
Okay. Well, thank you, WTLC,
for our community. AM 1310 The Light presents Legally Speaking. Here is today's host.
Sorry about the technical glitch. We lost our contact and they replayed the opening. For all our listeners who are now rejoining us again, you can join us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Now, having said that, we're doing a continuation of the discussion of earmarks. You will be able to contact your congressional office if you have a nonprofit or a government type program you want to be involved. But there's millions of dollars that will be available to you as a citizen through this process. Now, but the big 800-pound gorilla is the American Rescue Plan that passed this week. There's a lot of interesting legal things, but there's nothing in the history of America that we've had rescue plan of $1.9 trillion. Now, the reason that's important, the federal government took in about 3.8 trillion, I think, the last fiscal year. I have double checked the number, but we're going to have a stimulus of $1.9 trillion. Now, I want to, before I get to my expert panel, I want to highlight some of the important things about this stimulus that I think that are critical. The Senate made numerous amendments to the House version, and one of the biggest amendment they made, they cut the amount for unemployment benefits down substantially, and also they modified the qualification. But here are the important provisions that's going to apply to most of the people in the country. So the act makes the first $10,200 in unemployment benefits tax-free for 2020. So in other words, if you make less than $150,000 a year, which most people do, if you got unemployment, $10,200 of unemployment is not taxable. The second most important aspect about this, and the one that's going to be really exciting, is that each American who earned less than $75,000 less, you will get a check for $1,400 in your bank account. That's $1,400, and you get $1,400 for each of your dependents, and that's very important. And so, so you qualify if you had adjusted gross income of $75,000 or your family of $150,000. So keep that in mind. If you don't get your check, we'll come over with a procedure on our next show to tell you how to get it, because we expect that to be coming soon. Now, the third important provision that's critical is the child tax credit. The new provision allows a tax credit of $3,000 per child for children under 6. And then if you make a large sum of money, they reduce the amount of the credit. So this is going to be very important for most people that have children. Just keep that in mind. And there's a lot of other provisions that are important, but that was the main one that jumped off the page for me. And the other thing I thought was equally important was the earmark legislation. Now, not a single Republican voted to give you, as an American citizen, the $1,400 stimulus money. They had a problem giving working American money, but not corporation, which got billions of dollars. So, you know, it was a happy day, but a sad day, because when I thought about that, I was thinking, why would the Republican, I know that they want to try to defeat the administration, but they voted against the very people they represent, which is a sad day. And so, having said that, I go to my expert panel. First, we'll start with my legal genius, Attorney Banks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Attorney Lee. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a long week for me this week. The court system is starting back up, and so now that means depositions.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Were you able to follow any of that legislation this week? I just thought it was so important that we have such a large amount of money going into the national economy. I just think that this is a game changer, because there's other provision to help eliminate poverty, you know, with the child and dependent care credit, the family and sick leave credit, employment retention credit, student loans. There's all types of things in this bill that makes it so exciting that, and more importantly, it addresses COVID-19, the coronavirus. Finally, I see a light at the end of the tunnel. I see that I think that when I looked at the numbers today, John, I can correct me, I thought it said that there was 103 million people now receive at least one dose of the vaccination. And so we're on track to look like everybody in America done probably by the end of June, which would be great. And just think about this. The 4th of July, family picnics, Labor Day, holidays, we'll now be able to eat and go back to some normal activity. Maybe we even attend a football game this fall. I don't know.
Absolutely. The administration is demonstrating through these priority actions within the first 50 days, is it even 50 days in the administration, proving to the American people that government can work on behalf of the American people. Attacking the coronavirus, putting in place a plan immediately to address the coronavirus was absolutely the first, absolutely should have been the first priority. A goal was set of 100 million shots in the first 100 days. That has been exceeded. And as we listened to President Biden's address earlier this week, we're well on target to have most Americans vaccinated so that they can spend July 4th enjoying that holiday with family and friends. Of course, small groups, still potentially social distancing, unless everyone in the family has been vaccinated. But that was absolutely the right priority, and the American Rescue Plan is historic. $1.9 trillion, as you mentioned, Attorney Lee. The checks are already in the mail, and if the checks are being disseminated, some people who have bank accounts, those checks are already being deposited by direct deposit. As Attorney Lee said, the biggest component is direct individual release, a one-time $1,400 check per person for individuals with earnings up to $75,000 and $150,000 for a married couple. And that means for a family of four, a family could receive up to $5,600 because it's $1,400 per eligible child as well. The expansion of the child tax credit will cut child hunger in half in America. There is money for small business, $15 billion in grants, and we'll spend some time talking about that. That could be a topic of a whole program. $35 billion loan guarantees on top of those grants, which allow $175 billion in lending. That's going to support restaurants and bars and African-American owned businesses. There's monies for testing and vaccination, and for schools to reopen safely. Food security. There's no reason why in America any child or any person should not have food. And so there is money to ensure food security in the United States. On top of the fact that, and as we know, so many Americans have lost their homes, have been forced out of leases. And so there's extended federal eviction and foreclosure moratorium will be extended through September 2021. There's also $25 billion, listeners, in emergency rental assistance, $5 billion for utility assistance, and $5 billion in emergency assistance for homelessness.
Well, we can say praise the Lord. We can say praise the Lord. Let's go, before we get to Attorney Sweeney, let's go to one of my favorite politicians, Representative John Bartlett. Representative Bartlett, are you on the phone? How are you doing today, sir?
Doing fine, my brother. How about yourself? Great.
How's things going over there? I saw that did they pass that bill to give immunity for all COVID type claims?
I don't think it's passed yet. It's moving.
Well, keep fighting, good fight, because I think that's a bad bill. Okay, you have a question for us today, sir?
Oh, let me tell all of our listeners this. I'm at 3350 North German Church Road. We've got fresh, perishable foods that we're giving away here today. So come by, get your food. If you know a neighbor or a friend that needs food, come by and pick it up. We got plenty of food here that we're giving away at 3350 North German Church Road at the Hindu temple.
Well, thank you very much. 3350 North German. I'll broadcast that several times. German Church Road. And what group is sponsoring this food giveaway today, Representative Bartlett?
This is the what's the name of the group? Hindu Temple of Central Indiana. Hindu Temple of Central Indiana.
Well, thank you very much. That's very impressive.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, Hindu Temple, for giving away free food today, because we feel the rescue plan that Attorney Banks just talked about, it's a great plan, but there's still people that suffer today that need that food. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome. And let me say this, now that we got that commercial out the way, we did a call to action at the State House this past 2 weeks because of what happened February the 18th. And we trying to make sure that all people in the great state of Indiana are properly represented. And so then in order to make that happen, our voice has to be heard at the mic. And so what we have decided to do is get together all the legislation that has been discriminatory, that has affected the African-American community in a negative way, and file suit against the state of Indiana. So and that's the only way, because if you remember, Nathaniel, back when the district that I served, we had to file a suit against the state of Indiana to get rid of the multi-member districts. Marion County was the only place that had it. Well, you had a high concentration of African Americans. You had John Day, Bill Crawford, and Joe Summers in that multi-member district, and Mae Dickinson had to file that lawsuit to get single-member districts so that you get properly represented. So it's time that we do that again.
Well, for the benefit of our expert panel and our listeners, so you give them the baseline as to why this is such a big deal in Indiana. And so not everybody necessarily across the country know how bad this incident was. Could you briefly describe what is the foundation for this call to action, Representative Bartlett?
February the 18th, there was a bill put on second reading, on third reading, and they called for a discussion. Representative Greg Porter went to the mic to offer his dissatisfaction and with the legislation and the fact that it was discriminatory legislation. And someone hollered, "Come on, man, we don't want to hear that." And then booing started. So as they started booing, Greg Porter stopped and he said, "I have a right to voice my opinion and speak for the people that I represent in my district." He said, "But I'll cut my comments." So he said, he walked away from the mic, and as he was walking away from the mic, there was more booing and some more comments made, negative comments. So he went on out of the chamber, and three guys, Republicans, got up and walked out, and I got up and walked to the door to see what was going on, because I didn't want him out there by himself, but the chaplains were praying with him. So as they prayed with him, I went back in because I didn't want no legislation to hit that we missed. Then Representative Vernon Smith went to the mic, and he too was booed because he was talking about some of the personal experiences that he had in life. He was booed at the mic. And then Representative Summers and Representative Shackelford went out to see what was going on with Representative Porter as well. And one of the Republican representatives literally tried to hit her another one of the Republican representatives grabbed him and pulled him back to keep him from hitting her. And then they had it on video. So that's what, I mean, we are at a place in our state house where legislators are literally trying to fight other legislators. That's unheard of. I mean, that's just crazy. So that was a call to action. And our IBLC chair met with and some other members of the leadership team met with the speaker to get some things done. And they came up, they're going to have implicit bias training for all the legislators. But I asked the question of, and I think a little different than most folk, and I get that. But I said, why is it that if I commit an offense against a white person, I go to prison? If they commit an offense against me, up to and including killing me, they get implicit bias training. Why is that? And nobody's answered my question yet. But other than the fact they said that education is important, yeah, but if you know they need training, why don't you train them before they kill me? So, anyway, that's pretty much what happened at the State House.
Thank you. And I have a comment now from Attorney Sweeney, who's an expert on these type of things. What do you think? This is kind of a wild and crazy Midwest, Attorney Sweeney. We talk about our bills that got passed, but we have real issues with the post-Trump era of being just everybody trying to be more obnoxious than the other guy, it appears, here in our state. What do you think?
Well,
I don't know what their mindset is. All I know is I was elected to represent 67,000 people. They sent me to the State House to do that. I plan to get that done. And their booing or their antics are not going to stop me. It's, again, I want to compile data going back to Unigov, which was discriminatory, and correct all that. We passed legislation to violate our Constitution of the state of Indiana. For instance, our Constitution says when we have seizures, when the police stop cars and get drug monies, and those dollars are to go to the Common School Fund according to our Constitution of the state of Indiana. We passed legislation to direct those dollars to other places, and I think that's a violation.
Wow.
There are 87 counties who go to the polls and vote for their Republican or Democrat judge or independent. The five counties where there's the highest concentration of African Americans, they cannot do that. Their judges are appointed. So these are things that we've done legislatively, and we don't have enough folks to vote against it to make the difference. But this is something that we're certainly going to have to address. And I know some of my colleagues in the State House don't agree with me, but that's okay. I think it's time that we do this.
Hey, for listeners, we're going to go to a break on the radio station, but you can join this live on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. But we'll continue the discussion. Now, Attorney Sweeney and producer can go to the break, but we'll continue our discussion on our social media. Attorney Sweeney, you got a legal analysis of what could we do to fix this problem?
I couldn't quite understand the state representative. You're talking about the local problem?
Well, it's a state. Well, what happened is that while in the government chambers, a black representative, there was several legislation that came up that the African-American legislators thought were blatantly discriminatory, and that they only targeted counties that had a high percentage of African-Americans. And so when the legislators stood up, they were booed, and so he walked out. They were saying obnoxious thing. And so, but one of the female legislators, one of the Republican male, tried to attack her and was restrained. And so his comment was, they were saying they want to get bias training. His comment is that, well, bias training, but if I did that, I would be arrested. They do that. They get training.
Well, I think that this is all the fallout from Trump's administration and emboldening racist views and trying to snatch the country back to before the civil rights movement. But amateur hour is over. We have a competent, mature leadership in Washington, and things are going to change in this country, and we're not even 100 days into the administration, and things have really changed. So how will that affect Indiana and Indianapolis? There's going to be a trickle-down effect throughout the country. Don't you just feel the temperature and the rhetoric tamping down? Don't you just feel it? It's a much better time in this country, and I think with 4 years, in 4 years, that this country is going to look back on the Trump era, particularly the last year, and this transition of power, and they're going to say, never again. Because people just basically want peace and tranquility in their life, because life is short. I understand what the Trump MAGA people were fighting for. They're fighting for the soul of this country. They're fighting for white supremacy, but they still want peace in their life. And I think that ultimately, the mature administration that we have in Washington now, it will trickle down to the rest of the country, and you won't see any incidents like you did in the legislature in Indiana. Let me say just one thing also, Nate and Vanita. Nate, you mentioned that you're back doing deposition. Yesterday was the first day that I made a live court appearance in over a year. I felt so good to get back to court. I've been doing this for 40 years, and to just stop and see all my suits hanging in the closet, shirts and cufflinks, it was very sad for me. I was just so proud yesterday to get up early and drive down to the court near Los Angeles International Airport, and dress in a shirt and tie. That was very, very good. Number two, I have had both vaccinations, and I strongly urge everyone to get vaccinated. I understand our history with being guinea pigs and being experimental and all the bad things that happened to us, the gynecological experiments during slavery, the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. I understand all those things, but I think there are too many people watching, and there are too many other people taking this vaccination to be worried about this being something that is going to be deleterious, and there's this conspiracy theory against Black people on this one. It still is a possibility that exists on other things, but on this vaccination, I strongly urge everyone to get vaccinated. Let me comment on your bill, on the bill that's being proposed. First of all, I really like it because it has both a short-term effect, that is, each person gets a sum of money and each family gets over $5,000 if you have that many dependents. It has a short-term effect, and then of course you talked about the long-term effect, loans to small businesses and things like that. This is what happens when you have a mature administration, an administration who's looking for inclusion instead of trying to divide the nation. I'm just so happy with the first month or two of the Biden administration. And I think that at the end of even in 2 years at the midterm elections, I think people are going to tune out Donald Trump as he goes stumping for senators and congressmen in the midterm elections. I think this or the majority of Americans who voted for him will turn their back on him. That's what I'm hoping.
Wow. One thing before we go back to Attorney Banks, I too join and echo your comment about vaccination. I took both my shots, and the process has been going very well here in Indiana. We have lots of sites, over 100. We had mass vaccination at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the world's largest sporting venue in the whole world. But they opened it up, and so we had thousands and thousands of folks get shots. Now, the important things about these shots that I thought that was more important than anything else is that once the person gets the vaccination, the statistics suggest that it eliminates death. We had over 500,000 people dead. I've had friends and relatives die because of the dreadful disease process. But that is the one thing that I was happy to hear, that I would try any type drug based on the premise that it keeps you from dying. And that's a welcome sight of relief. So whatever vaccine process out there, I echo Attorney Sweeney, please take advantage of it. And Attorney Banks, what's your thought? Hello? I think I lost Attorney Banks, but having said that, go ahead.
I echo Attorney Sweeney and Attorney afraid of the ravages of COVID-19, which include death, than I am of the vaccine. The vaccine is safe and effective, and I encourage everyone, when it is your turn and when you're offered the opportunity, please take the vaccine. That's going to get us back to normal, enable us to gather with friends and family. As Attorney Sweeney stated, my last physical day in the office was a year ago, Friday, the 13th. And so I am so looking forward to returning physically back to my office very soon. And there was a lot in what Representative Bartlett shared. From my perspective, the assault on the female member of your House, I'm wondering about whether there have been any formal charges, at least of assault, filed. What are the rules of the House, and how do they relate to this particular situation? And third, is there security for members of the House? I went to high school with Representative Greg Porter, so I will send him a shout out. And then there are questions regarding what sounds like partisan gerrymandering in Indianapolis. And I wanted to share that the H.R. 1 for the People Act would end partisan gerrymandering, which is exactly what you described, Representative Bartlett, and would enable the voters to draw their own districts. And I wanted to also ask Attorney Sweeney. I understand in California, and I'll give you this information, you can draw your own district. And so I'll stop there. There was really a lot to unpack from Representative Bartlett's comments. Is he still on the line?
Oh, I can get it back, but go ahead.
But so I was wondering all those things regarding, are there any rules that would protect members of the Indiana House from that assault that it sounded like Representative Bartlett described?
I will call him and get him back on.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. We can talk about it later. I thought if he was still on, but well, it would seem to me that there should be some consequences for what took place at the Capitol, period. That would be my...
I know, but I want to keep it live.
Yeah, I have no idea what the definitive answer to your question is, Vanita, but I would think that laws of Indiana
Hey, call back into the station, Representative Bartlett.
Do not stop when you walk through the doors of the state capitol. Assault is assault wherever it happens.
Absolutely.
I would think that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is the issue over? Are the representatives taking action relative to that particular incident?
Well, I have them come back on. Let's get this next caller, and then we'll get Representative Bartlett. Okay, caller, you have a question for us.
Yes, good morning, Nate. This is Guy.
Good morning, sir.
Great program. And, Representative Bartlett hit the nail on the head, basically, because this started many, many years ago. And it's really time to take care of the situation. I agree with him, because if you look at the situation in Georgia and the situation in Indiana, both states at one time were bastions of the KKK. And now we see that Georgia has made tremendous strides in trying to overcome that legacy, but it seems like in Indiana we're still stuck. So it would seem that from Unigov, with the situation is, there's nothing wrong with unified government, but when you have certain cities within Marion County that can vote for the mayor of Indianapolis, but other residents can't vote for their mayor, that is an obvious violation of the Constitution. Number one, it would seem to me, I'm not a legal expert by any means, but just from common sense, that would seem improper. Also, what's happening now in terms of the legislature in Indiana, and what Representative Bartlett was speaking about the single-member districts and so forth, that also is something that is questionable. So I would think that these types of issues should go to at least the Supreme Court.
Well, I actually did, but I got Representative Bartlett back on the line. Let me ask him one quick question. Representative Bartlett, here's a $1 million question that we want to know. Does the legislators, while they're in section, get special protection or immunity from criminal prosecution for the obvious physical assault by the Republican against a female legislator?
Wait a minute. Do that again. I'm sorry.
What we want to know is that while you're in session, do you get immunity from criminal or civil prosecution for a criminal act?
That's correct.
So he can't be prosecuted even though he committed a crime while in session?
Well, he can, but as soon as session's over.
Oh, I see. So while session's in session, and so the day it ends, he could then be indicted.
Yes. If I rob a bank today, they may not catch me till 6 months later, but the offense is still committed.
Okay.
Does that hold true for the President of the United States?
I believe so, because I think that they're going to get here. I believe they'll get it.
Yeah, but what's the probability that they will actually prosecute this legislator for the physical assault?
Whoever the offense was committed against would have to file charges.
Well, that was my question. What actions are planned to be taken by the representative that was assaulted?
That I do not know. And did nobody bother me, because if they had I could have told you. But Matter of fact, you probably would have.
I don't think nobody gonna muck around with Representative Bartlett. I mean,
But
you know.
here's the deal. There's so many things that in the legislation that has been passed that is discriminatory. That it's time we took a look at that. When we got Unigov, which I believe was totally wrong, when we got Unigov, they gave us 25 districts and 4 city county councils at large. It was never a problem until African Americans held all 4 at-large spots. Then we changed legislation. It was okay for us to go and vote for our judges until we began to get African American judges. Then they changed the way that we're able to select our judges, from electing them to selecting them. And so when African Americans make gains, and the old adage is, every time we catch up, they move the goalposts. So it's time that we say enough is enough, and we take a stand. And I may, and I probably will, have to lead that charge, and I'm okay with that. But we just need to compile the data and get our day in court. Win, lose, or draw, we need our day in court to expose what is happening here in the great state of Indiana.
But we have allies, Representative Bartlett, like the Legal Defense Fund of the NAACP, for instance, and other groups that should rally to this. You know, like I agree, it's really past time. You know, so listen.
Well, gentlemen, I hate to cut you off, but here's the problem we're faced with now. And our expert panel could tell you this too. All over the country, we've seen a radical departure in voting rights legislation in terms of fundamental fairness. In most of the states, we've seen an assault on democracy. The assault on democracy did not stop on January 6, 2021. We've seen it real time in state legislatures by legislators. They're trying to come up with methods to deny minority citizens the right to vote, the right to participate in democracy, which is shameful. I was watching the situation in Florida, and the Republican that ran the election, they were outraged. I mean, they won the presidential election, they won the statewide office, and they want to have more voter restriction in the state of Georgia. They've done very well up until this year, in which they lost the Senate race, but they still control the state house, they control the governor's mansion, the secretary of state, the attorney general, all the other statewide offices. And so they've decided that they want to set up barricades to the ability to have an open, competitive election. That's tantamount to just does violence to the U.S. Constitution in terms of being fundamentally fair, equal protection of laws. So they've gone away from that. So it's not just Indiana. You know, it's like stand in line. It's occurring all over the country. Now, finally, on this issue, for the first time when I did a trip, I went in this parking lot, and there was a guy with a big QAnon sign in his window of a luxury vehicle. And I'd never seen that before. And then when I was at the airport, the guy behind me had a QAnon shirt on and a belt. The KKK used to wear a hood. So I grew up in the South, and the white supremacists wore a hood. They concealed their identity. That's not the case anymore. We have people that are openly advertising, which was shocking to me, that they're racist. And I think that we're in a new dawn. Now, Attorney Sweeney kind of characterized that we had adults now. Maybe we could reverse this trend, but I think it's going to take more than a few months. I think this is going to be a long process.
Yeah,
We have the tools to do it. We got to use those tools. If we don't use the tools, it's our fault.
And it starts with the data. The data is key, and it sounds like you have years of data, and so that's critically important.
That's correct. This
and,
case,
and the resolve to get it done. And you mentioned the coalitions as well, and so it takes persistence. And it sounds like with Representative Bartlett, you have that resolve and that the time is now to move forward in addressing and fixing this problem. Attorney Lee mentioned that the issue of gerrymandering did reach the U.S. Supreme Court, which declined to address the question on the basis that the issue was a political question and really wasn't a justiciable issue, and it didn't present a case and controversy. But I don't know, our listeners may know that gerrymandering is where politicians, they're able to basically draw their own districts and pick their own voters. And they draw those districts, and it sounds like Unigov is an example of that. They draw those districts in a way that benefits themselves. And I've heard examples where if an HBCU is in the district, that the district is drawn so that the HBCU would be excluded from the district, for example. Absolutely. And so one of the provisions of the H.R. 1 for the People Act is that it would eliminate this type of partisan gerrymandering.
Okay, Attorney Sweeney, what were you getting ready to say, sir, before we cut you off?
Yeah, I lost my train of thought, but I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But
no, it was about, you were saying something
trying
about.
But go on. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, because what I was concerned about is that our callers are rightfully concerned. I think that this process, we didn't, this great American experiment, we didn't just get into this like in 2017. I know we had a radical departure on some basic courtesy that we saw, but what was shocking to me though is that how it ended on January 6th. I was still stunned at the level of violence and unrest that where people was led to believe that they could overthrow the American government. That was a scary thought to me, that we actually had people, when I've been watching them, I don't know if you've been paying attention, and these folks actually believe what they were doing was the correct thing to do.
Well, they probably think it is the correct
thing. That's the Constitution, though, Nate.
That's
the Constitution. If you check the Constitution, it says the people have a right to do this if they believe that the government has is against us. So they do have a certain right. They don't have the right to do what they did, but the Constitution does provide for people to rise up, and that's one of the things that they look to when it comes to so-called regulated militia, a well-regulated militia, because that all throws back to the King of England, and so it goes back a long ways, but it's all about how you interpret those.
Okay, thank you. Now, Attorney Sweeney, what were you saying now?
I was saying the real surprise isn't that they think they could get away with, or they thought they could get away with overthrowing the government. They really think this is their government, their country, they built it, and that white people should be in control. But here's the real thing that I was shocked about. It's the kid gloves, the relative kid gloves that they were treated with, upon them storming the Capitol. The police would have fired on a group of black demonstrators, fashioned even say Jack Robinson. There would have been hundreds and hundreds killed. And even in the prosecution of these insurrectionists, is shocking the kid gloves they're being treated with. For an example, the guy with the outfit on with the antler horns, with the costume on, apparently ate only organic food. So he was transferred to a prison or holding facility, a detention center, where he can get his organic meal. That is unheard of in the criminal justice system. And of course, another woman who was on bail applied to the federal judge to take a vacation to Mexico. It was shocking to me that the judge allowed it. Absolutely shocking. So those are the things that concern me. The fact that they don't treat them with the same toughness that African Americans or minorities are treated with in punishing them for crimes they committed. And I'm shocked that, and I'm an old criminal lawyer. I don't do criminal anymore, but under the felony murder rule, all of these people could have been charged with murder because someone died during the commission of the felony that they were committing, that is storming the Capitol. So that's what I'm more concerned with, not with them changing the mindset of a bunch of white folks who believe that they're superior. It's the criminal justice system that is treating them with kid gloves. That's my problem.
Yeah, Attorney Banks.
Absolutely.
Comment on this issue?
Absolutely. I agree that, currently there have been over 400 arrests, and it's one of the biggest criminal probes in American history. There is 15,000 hours of surveillance video. They've got 1,600 electronic devices and cell phones that they're combing through, and emails, over 900 search warrants, and there are likely to be hundreds of more people to be charged. I echo the obvious and manifest inequities to which many of the examples that you raised, Attorney Sweeney. It's clear that I read that they're considering some, quote, plea bargains as they continue to build a conspiracy case against many of those rioters.
Wow.
Well, let me say this if I can. I know we're running short on time, Nathaniel. You heard it here from John Sweeney, practicing law for 40 years here in California. We all know that the prior that you preach to is the most important thing in jury trials. That is, the jurors that make up are the ones who are going to hear your case. And there are going to be inconsistent verdicts if there are several different trials, because you're going to get some people who are sympathetic with the Trump people and the rioters, and they just won't convict. And then there are these defense attorneys for these insurrectionists are raising the defense that it was the president who called them to do it. Therefore, how can they be criminally liable or guilty? And so you got the Senate letting off Trump by a majority vote, not holding him responsible on one hand, and then you have some people who may get acquitted because they were relying on what Trump said. I think that's going to be an explosive story in the future, and it's going to really show the inequity in the criminal justice system. And let me just say before I get off here talking about the justice system, I'm going to give a shout out to my colleagues, Ben Crump and Chris Stewart, for that outstanding job they did in driving that settlement for $27 million for the family of George Floyd. It was brilliant strategy to ramp up the settlement discussions right at the beginning of the criminal trial, and with all the people gathering again to demonstrate clearly the city council of Minneapolis wanted to buy their peace and didn't want any more. I thought it was brilliant strategy by two brilliant lawyers. I just want to give them a shout out.
Well, thank you very much
Agreed.
for that comment. And I like to, at this time, thank our guests for calling in, particularly Representative Bartlett, that I know fights a good fight every day. I'd like to thank our superstar panel, Attorney John Sweeney, Attorney Vanita Banks. I'd like to thank each and every one of you, the listening audience. Next week, we do, Marsha Costa will follow up with a second series on the Social Security aspect. And I know many of you want to hear about that. But thank you all for listening in today. And as Attorney Sweeney told you, go out there and make sure you get that vaccination done as quickly as possible. Their goal is to try to get everybody in America done with this by the end of June. So everything we've seen so far shows that the process is safe. You got to remember, vaccines has been around a long time. And the thing about this process is that it's specific to the pathogen that has been killing folks. So I encourage you, if you haven't been vaccinated, go on the website today, or you can sign up. Here in Indianapolis, for example, they're doing it at the Motor Speedway. They're doing thousands of people every couple hours. So take care of yourself, and God bless you. Have a great day.